Sorry, I'm trying one more thing. It should just be a couple more.
So candidates, while that's happening, what would you guys like to do in terms of timing? So we have an idea, which is to use reactions to warn everybody about like a 10-second, when there's 10 seconds left on a reply. So if I put up like a reaction, like a clock like that, can everybody see it? Yeah, some people see it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll put up a clock as a timer, like a reaction. Maybe a couple of us will be able to help with that. Michael Lang, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Your clock icon was better than mine. And did you want to take on that part?
Sure.
Great. Excellent.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you and I'm going to try and go live again.
Great.
Do I have host?
Yeah, you were the
Stream. Let's see if it'll work. I will share the link here and in Slack and on our on the other thing. Okay, we're just waiting to see if it will go live.
Vic, I know you said Michael was doing the clock. I actually don't see Michael.
No, I don't see him either.
okay.
He's the one on the bottom. Oh no! Oh, there he is. There's Michael.
There's Michael.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like there's a photo with his toddler on his shoulder.
Yeah.
There's
So
the other-
I'm going to go back to my original photo. It's just me with my family.
You have fun.
And what I'll do is I'll put up the clock so everyone can see it.
Yeah.
Can everyone see that?
no, I can't see it.
No.
Yeah, I
can't-
can't see it either. Sorry.
I think you need to be on to see it.
Oh, I see the little clock emoji. Mike,
Yeah.
oh,
I'll put it up again and let's see if people can see the clock emoji
yes.
on the top left corner. So is there anyone that can't see it?
I can't see it.
Yeah, I can't see it either. Sorry.
And it looks
Okay.
like Janet Lewis and Nick can't see it either.
Okay, let's try it again. I'll try it with the video on.
Mm-hmm.
The clock is now on. Can anyone not see it? No. Okay, so it's not working.
Oh, it is working.
It is working now.
It's very small. It's very small on at the top corner there when you do that.
Okay.
Vic's was actually very large.
Oh, it was?
Gray. Yeah, his was very large. Yours is a tiny little clock, red clock.
Yeah, here, I'll do another one.
So funny. I see them exactly the same.
See, now I see a gray clock, but it almost matches the ceiling.
Yeah, it matches. Vic, yours matches the blur function.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, we could use a hand if people are struggling since I think it's yellow.
I can do this.
That will work.
So this is for 10 seconds left, is that correct?
Yeah.
So
Excellent.
believe it or not, I have the whole thing up and running.
Yay!
Just so
Great.
everyone in this meeting knows, it should be live on that. I'm gonna share it out with the people in the waiting room. I'm gonna assume everyone in the waiting room live stream. So don't be too goofy unless you want to be goofy. Stream now up at, there we go. So those people all have that.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's checking it on a separate screen. You should be see that it's working, hopefully. And I'm not sure that I'm seeing this working now. Hang on. I did see Michael waving his hands around, but now it says it's waiting again. I'm not enjoying this YouTube fun. That's a bit wild. Just a second. Go live again. See if that helps. Probably have too many channels. It is live. People can probably hear me on this. It says it's live, but is anybody seeing it live? Sorry, everybody. And it should say W at the end. I'm gonna give another one here. Very sorry for the excitement.
No problem.
It does say it's live. Can you talk for a minute, Vic, please?
Sure, absolutely. Just talk or are we live?
It is live, but I'm just trying to see.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the DPAC All Trustee VSB Trustee Candidate Forum. We are very, very happy to have you here. This forum is being hosted on the traditional unceded lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I personally reflect on that by looking at our intergenerational family trauma that we've had through partition. And I also, have dreams and hopes and desires for what's going to happen to our city, and our local governments now are 3 First Nations. We actually have 5, and this is something that not many people know, but the VSB serves 5 local governments: the City of Vancouver, UBC, the Squamish Nation, the Musqueam Nation, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. So that's something that I want to just definitely put out there and make sure everyone knows that and reflect on that as very important. Today, we are joined by
Vic, I'm going to pause you for a minute because people aren't necessarily watching it right now. I just need to know that it's working, which it is. So give me 2 minutes to start sharing out. And let's say we start at 7:30, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Okay. 3 minutes, guys. Everybody's good. So, okay, the hands things again. Okay, so Michael, you can put the hands. Yeah. Okay, great. That's a 10-second warning. Does everyone have the right view? So for the audience for YouTube, that's going to be in the default speaker view. But because you guys are part of the Zoom room yourselves, you can customize your own view to how you want it. You can have it speaker view, or you can have the grid view. So to make sure that you see other people and then the hands too. Tracy, how strict do we want to be on the time? And that's usually, something that it seems like a very friendly bunch here. So that's why I'm kind of asking.
So in my written material that I'm going to read out in a bit, I say that you'll get a 10-second warning. And if you're still talking after a minute, you'll be muted. So I don't know, is that fair with everybody? Or, now we've started half an hour late. I think we want to be as timely as possible.
And just to clarify, Tracy, it's 1 minute responses?
Yeah.
1 minute.
Yes, and I will go over all of that too, once we get going.
Yeah. When I was looking through it, I think the only part that we probably didn't rehearse, Tracy, was how long does someone have to ask a question to another candidate?
Yeah. Well, what do you think? 30 seconds?
I was thinking 30 seconds.
Yeah. And who's timing? Is it Mike is timing? Michael?
Yeah. I think it might be even harder to time the 30 seconds. Let's just do that on the honor system for now.
Okay, for now.
I just wanted to let everybody know that it is streaming now.
Okay, great.
Great. Welcome everyone to the DPAC VSB All Trustees Candidate Forum. We are joined by the candidates that completed the survey, the DPAC 37 detailed questions. This forum is being hosted on the traditional unceded lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I personally reflect on that through my own family's intergenerational trauma through partition. And I look at that as something that we need to reflect on as the VSB, because very few people know that the VSB serves 5 local governments: the City of Vancouver, University of British Columbia, the Squamish Nation, the Musqueam Nation, and the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. I would love to welcome our moderator tonight. Our moderator is Tracy Sherlock. Tracy Sherlock is a very accomplished reporter. Her focus has been on education and on books. She's been written and writes for the New York Times, and she even wrote for the Vancouver Sun for many years. And she's a freelance reporter now, still writing for the National Observer. And she's also a journalism instructor. So she teaches at Cortland. Tracy, welcome. And I would like to welcome again all of our candidates. All of our candidates did go through those detailed 37 questions. You are here because you have shown a commitment to being a trustee. And I can't tell you how much this DPAC appreciates you being here and how much we look forward to working with all of you. Tracy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vic, for that introduction and for the land acknowledgement. I appreciate both of those things. And hello to everyone. Hopefully the audience can see us, and welcome to everyone. And thank you to all the trustee candidates who are here and all of the viewers as well. This year for school board, the civic elections actually entirely, I would say, are kind of confusing. There's a lot of candidates and a lot of parties. For school trustee alone, we've got 31 candidates representing 8 different parties and including 5 independent candidates. It's a lot. They are all vying for 9 Vancouver School Board seats. There are 4 incumbent trustees. Hope I've got all these facts right. And 5 currently sitting trustees who are not running again. To put that into perspective, during the last civic election in 2018, 4 years ago, it doesn't seem that long, but it was 4 years ago, my records and memory show there were just 21 people running, so quite a bit fewer. But there were also 8 parties represented at that time, and the hot topics were inclusion, full schools, long-range facilities plan, and music education. So all I could say about that is the more things change, the more they stay the same. I think those are still the hot topics. We're going to get started by giving each candidate the opportunity to introduce themselves and explain what they see as the most important role for a trustee. So that'll be the first question. Following that round, I will have one specific question for each trustee candidate. And after you answer your question, you have the opportunity to ask another trustee a question of your choosing, and the other trustee will also be of your choosing. So just before we get started, I wanted to lay a few ground rules. I'm going to ask the questions to trustees in alphabetical order. So that's the first thing. You can prepare yourself in that way. Every response will be timed at 1 minute. You will get a 10-second warning. I don't know, Mike, do you want to practice that? What does it look like? Yeah, 10-second warning. And if you're still talking after a minute, you will be muted because we have to keep this going. And again, apologies to everyone for starting it late. There were some technical difficulties. So please keep your responses concise. One thing to remember is that trustees do not control the curriculum, including education about sexual orientation and gender identity. So please keep your answers limited to things that trustees do have jurisdiction over. And if you go too far afield, again, you will be muted. When you have the opportunity to ask another trustee a question, we just clarified you'll have 30 seconds to come up with that question. We ask that you not ask the question to another candidate from your party. Choose someone from a different party. And if the questions are getting repetitive, or it seems like one person is being questioned too much or too heavily about the same topic, I reserve the right to redirect your question to somebody else to keep it fair and interesting for all of the candidates. So bear that in mind when you're asking your question. Maybe try to come up with something new and original. If we've run over 90 minutes by the time we complete those two things, your introductory question and then the follow-ups, then we'll end the event at that point. If there's still quite a bit of time remaining, we may continue with questions. However, we will wrap it up no longer than 100 minutes. Now we're starting 30 minutes late. So I had said 8:45 is the hard stop, but let's say 9 o'clock then, since we started late. Please remember to be kind and to be respectful. And I see that all of you are pretty good practiced at muting when you're not speaking. So that was the last thing I was going to say, is just please mute when you're not speaking. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Okay.
I do,
Don't.
Tracy,
Oh,
sorry.
you. Go ahead.
Alphabetical by first name or by last name?
Last name. Okay, thanks for the question. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. I'm not seeing any. So we will start with the first round, which I'll just say it again. It's to introduce yourself and explain what you think is the most important role for a trustee. And I have a list that includes all of the candidates, but I think I've got it down pretty good to who's actually here. So alphabetically, the first person is Rory Brown. So please go ahead, representing one city.
Thank you, Tracy. As you said, my name is Rory Brown. I'm running with One City Vancouver for school board trustee. I'm very happily so. I'm a former union activist, union president in Vancouver, and a teacher in Vancouver system for 15 years. And I now work at the BCIT, the British Columbia Institute of Technology, where I teach. And I'd have to, it's such a difficult question to answer. What's the most important rule of trust for a trustee? But I'd have to say that to be an advocate for the public education system, to keep the education system public. And for me, what that means is to make it equitable. So for those who are, perhaps come to the system with a little less opportunity, or in some cases, a lot less opportunity, to make the education system for them, possibly the richest part of their life. And for those who come to the education system, for those children who come with a lot of privilege, to make them part of a community so that they see that that they're part of a whole community of all people.
Thank you. Well timed as well. All right, next alphabetically is Steve Cardwell.
All right, well, Aitzwail Tanishi, which means good day in Hunkaminam, and in mischief. My name is Steve Cardwell. I'm former superintendent of the Vancouver School Board, previously superintendent in the Delta School District, and just retired as a VP of Students at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. I've served students all my life, and much as what Rory is saying, and I appreciate what Rory has said here, my focus has always been on student well-being and the importance of this. It's the only chance they get. And as a board, that is one of the primary functions of the board, is to ensure student success and their well-being throughout their schooling years. And that means working with the staff, working with schools, working with parents, to ensure there's a great pathway for the students to follow. So thanks very much, and appreciate the hands up. That's my time.
That's great. Thank you very much. And next up is Lois Chan Pedley.
Hey everyone, happy to be here. My name is Lois Chan Pedley. I'm a mom to 2 kids in the public school system. I was first elected in 2018, and my 2 hot topics were music and outdoor education, and they still are. They're still the same. And what I learned in the last 4 years is that provincial funding is lacking in terms of being able to support these amongst other initiatives and things that the district wants to do. So I think for me, the role of a trustee is to build community partnerships to find more resources to support students, as well as figuring out other creative ways to fund operational and capital projects in the VSB. Those 3 things are going to be my priorities.
Thank you very much, Lois. And next up, now I'm not sure of the names of people for ABC who are all together, but next up is Alfred Xian. Is he here?
No, he's not.
Alfred's not here.
Okay, thank you. And is Kyla Epstein here? From One City? Okay, no. Okay, so from ABC is Preeti Faridkot here?
Yep.
Okay, you're next.
I am here.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Preeti Faridkot, and I'm running with ABC Vancouver. I'm a mother of 3. I work with the Richmond School District. I know how the school system works. My passion is to create a safe environment and safe, healthy, and sustainable environment for all the kids and the community. Listen to the parents and the concerns that we have. I have a special needs child myself, and I know the struggle that we face on a day-to-day basis as a parents, and I want to bring that up. I want to make those changes, bring it to our policies, work on some budget cuts, and also see if we can get more funding from the government, from the ministry, to actually make Vancouver a better city. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much. Next up is Janet Fraser.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm Janet Fraser, running with the Greens, and I was first elected in 2014, and I'm pleased to be running again. And one of the key reasons I really wanted to come, I really want to be back on the board, is that we have recently unanimously approved the education plan with the accompanying equity statement, and those were developed from the ground up, from talking with students, from working with the community. So they came to the board with a lot of work, community work behind them. So the focus is on student success, student achievement, student well-being, physical and mental, as well as a sense of belonging. It's on equity, and it's on our reconciliation journey as a board. So right now, at this point in time, I think that is a priority for me as a trustee, so that we can ensure that every student in Vancouver graduates with dignity, graduates with purpose, and with options for the next steps in their lives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Next up is Victoria Jung. Is she here from ABC?
I am Victoria Young here.
Oh, Young, sorry.
That's okay.
So I'm with ABC Vancouver. I am running as a school board trustee because I believe that education is the way to create a sustainable city. And I think that the Vancouver school system should be a place for kids to have a healthy environment, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I believe that I would really like to see that our youth and children are more prepared for what comes after high school and for their future after high school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Next up is Aaron Leung.
Thanks, Tracy. My name is Aaron Leung. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm just so thrilled to be running with the Vision Vancouver team. For me, I think the most important thing for a trustee to do is to ensure transparency and accountability to the public. We are your voice at the table. You elect 9 trustees at large across Vancouver to govern one of the biggest and most complex school districts in British Columbia. And it's really our job to ensure that student outcomes are good, that students get what they need. And as a student who lived through 16 years of budget cuts, I want to be at the board table to deliver something better than what I had. I was chair of the city's Children, Youth, and Families Advisory Committee for 4 years, holding trustees and city councilors accountable for their decisions. And after that, I'm now ready to take that work to the Vancouver School Board. And I believe that the Vision Vancouver team has the breadth of experience that we need at the board table to deliver for students.
Thank you, Aaron. Next up is Susie Ma.
Hi, my name is Susie Ma, and I'm one of the 2 COPE candidates for school board. And I just wanted to let people know that I have taught for 35 years in the public school system in different Vancouver schools. I've taught from K to 12, as well as in the adult education system. So I have a breadth of knowledge about what life is like for students in classrooms. I've also been a union president at the elementary level and also a member at large at the BC Teachers Federation. So I see it from the union perspective as well. On top of that, I was the teacher PAC liaison for my school at VLN for several years. And so again, I was actively working with the school PAC to ensure that students' needs were being met at the school level at VLN. On top of that, okay, 10 seconds. I've also been, I'm also a parent of a child in the system who's gone through Vancouver schools.
Great, thank you very much, Susie. Next up is Kira MacArthur.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm Kira MacArthur. I'm running with Vision Vancouver, and I come to this with a number of perspectives. I went through school with undiagnosed learning disabilities, and I know how challenging that can be for students. I'm also the mom of 2, one of whom's in the school system and one of whom's in daycare. I am my PAC treasurer, and I also organized parent education nights. And thank you to Alan of the DPAC, who's helped us out a lot with that. And I've been in post-secondary, working in post-secondary education on the administrative side. I think the most important thing we need to do as trustees is make sure students get the support they need to succeed and thrive, whether that's support in the classroom, whether it's childcare, or whether it's other types of programs like food programs that make sure they show up every day at school ready to learn. I also think our job is to put children and families first and to advocate strongly for children and families so they're not doing it alone and they know they have our support. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kira. Next up is Nick Popple.
Hello, folks. Thanks for putting on this event tonight. My name is Nick Popel. I use he, him pronouns. I am thrilled to be running with 2 green incumbents, which makes me the green candidate on this campaign. I come from an extensive background in arts and facility management. I'm a proud theater grad from the University of Victoria. I've worked at UBC and UVic. I know how important it is for arts in our schools to continue and to thrive. My facility management background, I know how important it is that we make sure that our schools are seismically upgraded so students have a safe learning environment. I do believe that the role of a trustee is to meet students where they're at and ensure that we are doing everything we can to meet their unique and special learning requirements so that they graduate with the best skill set possible to tackle an increasingly troubling world. Last 10 seconds, I'll just say food systems. We got to do better, and I think we've got a good plan to make that happen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Nick. Next up is Jennifer Reddy.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Reddy. My pronouns are she, her. And thanks for DPAC for putting this on and for the invitation. I'm running for re-election with One City. I'm here with Rory Brown, and we're also representing Krista, Kyla, and Gavin, who are part of our team of 5. I am really excited because I would say that maybe what I've enjoyed most about being a trustee is advocating with and for parents, students, staff, and families, but also residents in Vancouver who are a part of this system, whether they have children or are educators or not. And I love doing that advocacy in voice and action. I also have a voting record, so running for re-election gives me the benefit of matching my election promises with actions I've taken at the table, 2 of which I've done with District Parent Advisory Council that I'm really proud of. One is that we've developed a policy on how we respond to discriminatory incidents in the district, and the other is a one-time anti-racism training for all staff. I look forward to doing more.
Thank you, Jennifer. Everyone's keeping so well to their time limits. It's awesome. Thank you. Next up is Christopher Richardson.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Richardson. I'm running as independent of sorts for school trustee. My experience and why I'm running is that after involvement in the community is that I have a child. I've experienced a child who the system did not accommodate. There were the methods within the educational world, but Vancouver School Board just didn't have the capacity at that point. So I knew the pain of a child who was unsuccessful, and I would not wish that on any parent. So I think that we can collectively work together to obtain the resources to ensure that we have a neighborhood solution for all students in a very complex school system. So it is the belonging, the safety, and it is important that we elect a group that can accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Next up is Hillary Thompson.
Hi, my name is Hillary Thompson. I'm the mother of 4. I'm a former PAC chair and I'm a lawyer. And the reason that I got interested in running was in part because of the journey of advocacy that I went on with my own child, first in advocating for her to get to go to her neighborhood school. Also, over the next few years, advocating for it to be wheelchair accessible, both the grounds and the playground. And in terms of what is the most important thing to me, I think it'll come as no surprise that I agree with what the other vision candidates have said, which is it's children. Children are at the heart of all of the decisions that we make, and we need to make sure they're in schools that are safe, accessible, and inclusive. That also means supporting families because children don't exist in a vacuum. So we need to make sure we have wraparound childcare and other things that make life easier for family. And finally, we need to work with the people that work in our schools because they're the experts, and we need to support them through a major recruitment or retention challenge that we're having right now. So that's our commitment.
Great. Thank you very much, Hillary. Now, next up is Rocco Trigueros. And I know I saw, oh, there he is. Yeah, go ahead, Rocco.
Yes. In order to ensure the success of students, it's very important that we empower their voices. I'm here. I think the most important role in this moment is to really have stakeholders, parents, and students, allow them to have real input in the decision making that we do. Because they've been complaining that they don't feel part of this process, and we need to open those channels. We need to change the procedures. We need to open those doors. We need to take the constraints. We need to allow parents and students and all the people involved in education to have a strong decision making. And this is why I'm here. And I don't want to stop district filters. I don't want time constraints. I want real communication with the people because we build education with democracy. I am a youth work. I was a youth worker at the Britannia Community Center, Talia Community Center. I'm also an education assistant and working with QP Big Triangle. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rocco. Next up is Alan Wong.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Alan Wong. I'm glad to be running with my Vision Vancouver colleagues, Hillary, Kara, Aaron, and Steve. I have a family of 4 children. I've worked at TELUS for over 30 years. I have also taught in every elementary school in Vancouver. Most important role of a trustee is to ensure student success. And this year, the board went through an education plan and developed through a long process. And in that education plan is a sense of belonging. So to ensure a sense of belonging for all students, and that's crucial in our system. To ensure student success, we need to advocate effectively to the province for proper funding. So we need to provide financial, social, educational reasons to demand proper funding. And I think the board of trustees need to get those reports from staff. And with effective objective reports, we can share with stakeholders, parents, communities, and lobby both independently and collectively together to the province. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Next up, Karina Zeidler.
Hi, I'm honored to be here tonight. I am a family doctor in East Van, and I was compelled to run for Vancouver School Board because of my profound alarm at the lack of any protections in schools right now against COVID-19, when day after day in my work, I can see the short and long-term harm that it's causing. Last year, I was very inspired by the unanimous decision from the board to bring in masks for all kids. And I think that trustees can once again fulfill their most important role, which is to be guardians and advocates for the safety of children. I'm a socialist, and I deeply believe in our collective responsibility to take care of each other, to look out for each other. And that is what I would bring to the board, not just in matters related to COVID, but all matters affecting the well-being of children.
Great, thank you very much, Karina. And I believe Josh Zhang is there with ABC, right?
Yes, that's me. Hi, everybody. I'm very honored to be here sitting beside my two wonderful colleagues. I'm running with ABC Vancouver. I spent 11 years in the VSB school system through Cares Atlantics, Carousel Maine, and then Point Grey Secondary. So the reason I'm running and the reason why I believe trustees are important is because we must act as governors to allocate seemingly always scarce resources, to be able to allocate them efficiently and maximize them to deliver an education that gives all kids in the district an opportunity to be excellent, to succeed, and to prepare for life after they graduate. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh. Okay, well, that went pretty quickly, I think. You all stuck to the timeline. Nobody had to get muted, so that was great. And thank you, everybody, for being kind and respectful. It was very good. So now we'll go on to the individualized questions. Does anyone have any questions before we do that? No, everybody's good. Okay. So, and again, I'm going to go in alphabetical order, so you guys all know what that is now, so you can prepare ahead of time. So first up is Rory Brown, who's running with One City, and he's running for the first time, I believe, running to be a new trustee. Rory, you were previously head of Vancouver Secondary Teachers Association, now running as a trustee candidate with One City. In your decision-making as a trustee, do you think you will be able to consider what's best for the system as a whole and students, and separate that from what's best for teachers?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, certainly. I have a deep belief that people, education workers, so anyone working in a system, if they feel satisfied and if they feel that they've had agency and voice in the decision-making process, then they work so much better. And in education, there's so many things that are difficult to measure and intangibles, and it's really difficult to sort of say, this school is working really well and this school is not working as well. Those measures are taken by the satisfaction and by the integrity that the people who are working in the schools display and feel in their work. And so I believe that a satisfied workforce means an education system that's vibrant and successful. And so I see it almost difficult to tease those things apart. Yeah, I think I've answered it.
Okay, that's great. And now you're the first, so we're gonna have some patience with you, but now you get the opportunity to ask another trustee candidate a question. So this is our first time doing it, so I guess say who it is and say what the question is. And just a reminder, I know I don't have to remind you, but just to everybody to be kind and respectful throughout the process.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tracy. I really am genuinely interested in working with everybody who I see on my screen. And I would welcome, I think we all have the best interests of Vancouver children in our hearts. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask, the two sitting green trustees, could be Janet or Lois or both perhaps. I'd like to ask them what preconditions would need to have been met for you to be satisfied with the closure of a school that has currently enrolled students. So, I obviously don't mean the closure of a school in the middle of the year, but we're talking about the closure of a school where there's students enrolled and the school is ready to go for September. What preconditions would need to be met for you to be comfortable to close a school like that? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. And just before you answer, I just want to make sure everybody knows that Rory asked either of the two sitting greens to answer, and that's perfectly fine. And if you are in a party and you get asked a question, but you want to pass that to another candidate from your party, it's fair to do that. That was clarified ahead of time in an email, but I just wanted to make that clear. So please go ahead, whoever's answering from the Greens.
Thank you.
So thank you, Rory, and thank you, Tracy. And this situation did arise during our last term as the board did vote to close the Queen Elizabeth Annex. And the conditions there and the policy that we follow for school closures lays out a number of conditions. And the key one is about the students and their education. And in this situation, the entire student cohort could move to the school which they would move to after grade, as they moved out of the annex anyway. So they were able to be part of a larger French immersion cohort, a larger staff with more robust educational supports around them. So that is the key precondition that I considered in that decision. And would, if there were to be any further closures that came to the board.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Janet, this is going to be a little more confusing for me because I can't just follow my sheet, so bear with me. But the next person that I'm going to ask a question to is Steve Cardwell, who is, Steve, of course, is a former Vancouver School Board superintendent, also formerly a superintendent of Delta schools. Now he's running as a new trustee candidate for the Vision Party. So in that role, or with that past, you bring a different perspective to the role of trustee. In the Vision response to DPAC's questions, Vision said children should be able to go to school in their own neighborhoods. Yet the response also said that long-term leases could be used on surplus lands. I wanted to ask you, how would you define land as surplus?
Thanks, Tracy. Great question. And if folks kept all of the records and reports that I was involved in when I was working at the Vancouver School Board, you'll recall one final comment I made in one of the reports on school closure that said that schools are the heart of the neighborhood and soul of the community. And I firmly believe that. I believe that parents move to communities and expect their children to grow up in those particular neighborhoods and communities and work and be with their friends before and after school and during school. And so the question of land is a challenging one because we don't support selling of land, but we do support leasing land. And there are parts of the Vancouver School District that don't have schools on them that we could entertain consideration of leasing them. There are also some schools where we have a lot of land and we could actually rezone, or some are actually zoned already to enable retail space and affordable housing above these retail pieces on the periphery of the properties. Thanks very much for the question. Great question.
Okay, you're welcome. And now it's your turn to ask a question of another trustee.
Okay, I wanted to ask ABC, and I was thinking, is Alfred's not here tonight? Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I think I will turn it to Josh. And Josh, I understand that the position of ABC is to bring back SLOs, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that and what you consider safe schools to mean for you.
Thank you for the question, Josh. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, ABC. Thank you for the question, Steve. ABC is promising to bring back the SLOs because through our door knocking and our outreach to communities, we've heard a lot of teachers, parents, and children. And I've seen the situation inside the high schools particularly change in the last year or so after they were asked to leave. And there have been certain incidents, I think we all saw the incident at Killarney where there wasn't even a real safety threat and everyone balked at the idea that there might have been. And because of that, there was so much school time that was lost and learning days not showing up the next school because they didn't feel safe. And this is not to say we're discounting anybody's experience of being intimidated by police. We certainly don't support that held accountable. So we're definitely open to redesigning parts of the program, but the memorandum of understanding has to be back in place, and the SLOs have to be allowed to do their jobs as it was before, because there weren't any publicized incidents of any issues. Sorry, I can't see because we're frozen, but I can't see if I'm being timed out.
Yes, time is up. Yes. So thank you for the answer. Okay. Next up, question for Lois Chan Pedley, who is a sitting trustee running for re-election under the Green Party. The question is, how do you prioritize the need for space for in-catchment students in neighborhood schools versus the demand for choice programming in schools?
Oh, that's a good question. So to start with elaborating on the problem a bit is that a lot of the schools in kind of full areas are having their choice programs moved out in order to make space for in-catchment enrollment. And that means there's kind of an inequitable distribution of where these choice programs are located around the city. And that's a really tough one to balance because I think choice programs are great and they attract students to go into the district. They serve as their neighborhood schools, especially at neighborhood schools. They can meet students' needs where they are. However, catchment is the priority. And I think the key here is to make sure that there's spaces and expansions put where they are, and also that we densify we advocate to the city to densify places where there are school spaces.
Thank you very much, Lois. Please go ahead and ask another candidate a question.
Ooh, okay. I have a question for Susie or Rocco. You've spoken about advocating to the province for adequate funding for public education. I'm wondering if you can give an example of what, when that has happened and of effective advocacy for public education and how you plan on bringing about that in Vancouver.
Okay, so Susie and Rocco, are you able to signal to each other who's going to answer?
Rocco,
yes.
do you want me to do it or do you
Yes,
want...
Susie, go ahead. I'll do the next.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Susie.
So one of the things that I did as a sort of a bit of research was I went back 10 years and looked at all the deficits that the school board has had, and it basically totals $96 million. I also know that at the end of the year, the school trustees decided to say that they would put together a robust plan. If Rocco and I get elected as trustees, it's more than just letter writing. I would say that we have an extremely good case to put together, that we would ask the public, parents, students, as well as our staff to advocate. So it would mean like meetings with MLAs, it might be a meeting with the Minister of Education, but I believe that we need to start saying, you know what, enough's enough. Our children are suffering, our programs are being cut, we don't have enough space in schools, and we need to do something about it. We can't just sit around and say, you know what, let's just put together a robust plan. Where's the action? I'd be willing to work with any and all of the trustees on that collective action.
Great. Thank you, Susie, for the answer. And thank you, Lois, for the question. Next up is Preeti Faradkot from ABC. And my question for her, she's running as a new trustee candidate under the ABC Vancouver Party, which says that if elected, ABC trustees would properly invest in modern, seismically safe and accessible school facilities and playgrounds. The province hasn't approved many seismic projects in recent years, and when they do, they only fund the lowest cost option for a basic school. So where would the additional money come from?
Okay, thank you for the question. I would say we need to look at the budget line by line to see where the money is being spent. And then we can, once we elected, then we can decide on how we can upgrade these facilities. Obviously, we know that we need more funding from the ministry anyways, like there has been a lot of funding cuts in the past. We need to put our budget in place so that we can we can ask for more funding from the ministry, and according to that, we can seismic rate. And, you know, we also have other things in the plan too. We have individualized plans for the kids and stuff. We can always work on those at the same time. I'm not sure if everybody can hear me. It's kind of frozen. Sorry.
No, we could hear you. Thank you, Preeti. I appreciate it. Please go ahead and ask a question of another trustee candidate.
I want to know about the enrollment numbers. We have an issue from some schools not having enough enrollment, and they always talk about closing those schools. So how would someone work in enrollment? Like, you know, if they have too much enrollment or less enrollment, how would you figure that out? And how would you move kids around when there's two siblings in the same house, but one is going to a different catchment and another one is going to a different catchment, and the parents are struggling with that one? So I will ask, I believe it's Nick from Greens.
And catchment adjustments.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think we got to approach it from two different angles here. I believe we've heard the idea floated already. I think we need to advocate to our city council and immediately upzone schools that have room for students with immediate family zoning housing. So we can, we've already built it, so let's make sure people are coming to that area. So that's something that we can progressively do with the tool set that we have, putting on our advocacy hats for student catchments that are student schools that are over capacity. This is where we really need to advocate strong as a unified board to the provincial government. Regardless of who's in charge in there for the last 25 years, we haven't received the funding we need. So we need to make sure that we're putting our advocacy hat on and really looking for creative solutions while we advocate to build new schools in those areas that are massively overpopulated with students already.
Okay, he beat the 10-second timer, so that was good. Next up is Janet Fraser. She's running with the Green Party. Janet is a sitting trustee, first elected in 2014, and the current board chair. She's running for re-election under the Green Party. The Vancouver School Board's educational vision in the long-range facilities plan says student learning and well-being will be supported through neighborhood schools. How do you define a neighborhood school generally, and more specifically in terms of size, walking distance from a student's home, accessibility, major roads, community use, or the presence of wraparound services, those types of things? How do you define a neighborhood school?
Thank you for the question, Tracy. And as the city has evolved, and the school district has evolved, we have catchments for our schools. So catchments for our elementary schools and our secondary schools. And those are the working, that is the working definition of a neighborhood school. And it is a challenge because when you set a catchment school to not cross major roads, to not go past major physical places like deep valleys or the freeway going through the city, then you do not necessarily, the catchment school is not necessarily in the center of the catchment. But looking at the safety of the students, that's what you need to consider first. And as the city evolves, as the student populations change, there is the opportunity to do catchment adjustments. Now, I know they don't happen often, and I think they would be very, we get a lot of feedback on them, but that is an option for us as we move forward to adjust the neighborhood to the catchment to the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you very much. Please ask a question of another trustee candidate.
So I think maybe I'll ask a question of vision collectively. When thinking about the education plan, which is one of the goals and one of the aspects of the goals that resonates with you particularly? And, it can be any candidate.
All right, I see Alan has his hand up. Is everyone okay if Alan answers that one? Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Janet. I love the question. With regards to the education plan, we've been working, I guess, collectively, and that's one of the good things about the board is with to ensure a sense of belonging and moving the sense of belonging. We spent the whole year, even longer, through an engagement process that reached out to the community. And this is, there was a report that came back, a 300+ page report, with regards to feelings of not only students, but staff, the parents of the community, of how we can encourage that sense of belonging. There is a percentage of individuals that don't have that sense of belonging. And this covers off many areas that we've discussed. For example, your feelings, the anti-racism, non-discrimination policy. So it's crucial for as we move. We just adopted the education plan that we provide operationalizing that education plan.
Thank you, Alan. That's good. Next up is Victoria Young from ABC Party. You are running as a new trustee candidate under the ABC Vancouver Party, which says in its platform that if elected, the ABC Vancouver trustees would reinstate honors classes and bring in more individualized learning. Can you explain these initiatives and tell us why they are your priorities and how they would be funded?
Gladly. Thanks again for having me. The cost of adding honors classes is zero. It is an added opportunity. It is, I truly believe, and I speak as well for ABC, that creating opportunities and adding value through honors classes gives youth a leg up in other areas. For example, applying to universities or to any kind of post-secondary, having honors when you're up against somebody who doesn't have honors. That institution is not looking to see whether it was an option for you to take. They just see it wasn't available. And so I think having it as an option is really important, so that kids can have more individualized learning. We're also very, we feel strongly about music, and thank you for my time warning, about music and other ways to show your academic excellence.
Thank you, Victoria. Please go ahead and ask a question of another trustee candidate.
Sure. I would like to ask, okay, so I would actually like to ask Rocco. I understand that you are not for having police officers in school. What is an alternative way of providing a safe environment, and how would you see that work?
The reason why I'm not for police officers is because there's no studies at this point that show that police presence at school make them safer. There's no any evidence-based study, and I just post one. What do we need? We need people who's gonna work. We need counselors. We need psychologists. We need behavioral analysts. We need people who understands behavior in a deeper way, not in a punitive way. So when we attack the problem of the inappropriate behavior from the root with professionals that know children, because police don't have understanding of children. They haven't studied about the science of learning. They don't understand the stages of children. When we have professionals who study, like you and me, children, they are able to actually attack the cause of the root better. But this is why instead of police, we need mental health in our schools. Psychologists, counselors, we need to increase the ratio because there is a lot of anxiety in our schools after pandemic. This is what we need.
Thank you, Rocco, and thank you, Victoria, for the question. The next question is for Aaron Leung, who is running as a new trustee candidate for the Vision Party. Could you explain what you would try to do as a trustee, if elected, to reduce the number of kindergarten lotteries so that kids can attend a school in their neighborhood?
Thanks for that question, Tracy. And I think it's a really important one. You know, Vision candidates for school board really believe that every child should be able to go to their neighborhood school. And I think that we've touched on some of those solutions tonight, you know, looking at catchment boundaries, looking at where we might need to build new schools, ensuring that our advocacy and our city planning is in sync with the province to ensure that we're delivering schools on day one and not 10 years after a neighborhood is built out. We want to ensure we don't want children to be having to go through the lottery system, and we really want to give that sense of certainty that parents have advance notice on where their child will be placed, so they have certainty going into September. But we really want to have a long-term plan to ensure that every child has the neighborhood school to go to, and that starts by thinking creatively about how and where we place students in a review.
Great. Thank you for that answer, Aaron. And now please go ahead and ask another trustee candidate a question.
Thanks for that. This question is for Josh Zhang with ABC. You've been a big proponent of financial literacy programs, and as someone who has sat through many budget consultations and gone through many committee processes, I know that the Vancouver School Board, if you want to fund a new program, you have to find those cost savings somewhere. And I also know that there are additional costs to honors programs. I was an honors student and I had to pay additional fees for the enrichment field trips. And so I'm wondering to Josh, if you're prioritizing financial literacy programs, where would you look for savings in the budget to deliver that?
Thank you for the question, Aaron. yes, we are. Look, I think you made it clear that I think financial literacy is very important. With all these things, we have to establish a pecking order, so to speak. What is most important to the students going forward when they graduate? And I think, to me, financial literacy is very, very near the top of that, because when you graduate from high school, you need to learn all this lingo in the real world about interest rates, financing. If you want to lease a car, they now ask you when you go ask to buy a car, how much do you want to pay per month? And you're not even sure what kind of contract you're getting into. If you ever want to own a house, or even if you're renting, you'd have to know what all these specific terms mean. So when it comes down to the end of the day, this is a skill that's necessary for everybody, and everybody sort of learns through trial and error. I think VSB should definitely try and their best, and as I said before, maximize a way to get financial literacy through to the curriculum.
Okay, thank you for that. Next up, we have Susie Ma, who is running as a new trustee candidate under the COPE banner. Susie, you told us, and I read on your profile about your history working as a teacher and in the union movement. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Rory Brown earlier. In your decision-making as a trustee, do you think you will be able to consider what's best for the system as a whole and students, and separate that from what is best for teachers?
I think that actually goes hand in hand. In terms of my experience as a union person, one of the things that I have dealt with many times is having meetings with parents, meetings with trustees, senior managers, principals, and I think that the ability to work with everybody and the ability to work with other stakeholders is critical when you are a trustee, because you're going to have to be working with so many different people in different arenas. And I think I have the skill set to do that. The other thing is that I think that I have quite an extensive experience with bargaining collective agreements. And those reasons for the collective agreement is to not just ensure protections for workers, but it's also to ensure that there are services that benefit students in our system. So they go hand in hand.
Okay, thank you. You also came in under the time before the warning, so well done. Please go ahead and ask another candidate a question.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask this one to Christopher. So in the last 20 years, I've known that it can take up to 3 years for any child to get any sort of testing, particularly psych education testing. And some students wait a very long time, and by the time they get tested, they're in high school. So if you were elected as a trustee, what would you do to address the amount of time it takes for students to get a special education designation?
Susie, thank you so very much. Because that's, I think, underpinning why many of us are here. If we can deal finally with students in a timely fashion that are struggling, the vulnerable students. So there is a test, and ask a kindergarten teacher, they know there's something going on. But the system doesn't fund until we actually do the psychoassessment. And it's limited in terms of the capacity. My son was kind of 6th on a list of 5 in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. And finally, the last day of grade 2, he was tested. I think we have to find the capacity so that parents aren't being forced to go private, because that will give the teacher the comfort and the knowledge of what is going on in that child's learning environment. And so it's critical. And I think that there were some positive steps just this June, I believe it was, before the House, in terms of making this a part of MSP, so that we, the schools, will have the funds to make it happen on a timely basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Susie, for the question. Next up, we have Kira MacArthur, and she is running as a new trustee candidate under the Vision Party. So please tell us about your understanding of the seismic mitigation program and how you think the Vancouver School Board should proceed with making schools safe in case of an earthquake, given the pace of provincial funding.
Thanks, Tracy. That's a great question. And I've worked in facilities and post-secondary, and I know how complex it is. And of course, the problem is we need funding from the province. We can't do this on our own. We can't just decide to seismically upgrade a building because we want to. We need to actually get the money from somebody else, which is very, very difficult and I think very hard for parents to understand. One thing I know from post-secondary is that we need to be strong advocates and we may need to make evidence-based cases for this. We need to really show the impacts, make the financial argument, and show all the reasons why we need the funding and why the funding is a priority. And that's really what works with government is using an evidence approach to demonstrating the need. And I think that has to be a key to underpinning our advocacy on these issues. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kira. Please go ahead and ask another trustee candidate a question.
Hi, I'd like to ask Rocco something. Rocco is an educational assistant, and that's such an important part of our system. And we know that you are on the ground working with kids every day and really supporting them and making a difference in their lives. So I would actually really like to know of a story of inspiration, something that you've had in that role that has inspired you, a child, a family, something that you've seen.
Thank you so much. I think the most important thing is at this moment, or the memory more deeply that I have is working with an Indigenous children who was in the spectrum. We need to respect so many issues around his teaching and about his learning. Her mother asked us to teach him outside of the classroom. And even though it was difficult for me as an educational assistant to provide adaptive work out of the classroom, we did that. And we could see the children was actually more live, more happy. We also introduced a lot of storytelling. We introduced music, expression. We went with the desires of the family. So for me, the most inspiring part is taking other people's culture and enrich that with our professional development. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Rocco, for the answer. Thank you, Kira, for the question. So I'm going to try to pronounce Nick's name right this time. So next question is for Nick Popel. Hopefully I said that right. Running as a new trustee candidate under the Green Party of Vancouver. The party's platform says, if elected, Green trustees will explore creative ways to supplement educational funding and resources. I wasn't sure what that meant, so I'm going to ask you to elaborate on it and tell us what it means.
Great. Thank you for the question. And yeah, you nailed the last name. Don't worry. Fun anecdote story for everyone on the side. Ask me where I got that last name from, and I'll tell you a cool tale. Yes, this is a great question. So we have been, for 25 years, we continue to advocate for the provincial government, and regardless of who's in charge up there, we are not getting the funds we needed. So I was actually very impressed with Trustee Champedley's motion on creating a foundation. I think we have a lot of people outside of the provincial government that are very interested in helping support our education system in our schools. And I'm really stoked about this idea of a foundation, because it offers an ability for us to pull in many different resources from different areas and be able to spread those around equitably amongst most of our schools. So I think that is something that we need to look for. We need to look outside the box on creative funding solutions, so we can make sure that we are building new schools and retrofitting and updating schools that we currently have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Nick, please go ahead and ask somebody else, another trustee candidate, a question.
Sure. My question, I know it's up to the team, but I am going to specifically zero in right on you there, Aaron. We hear advocacy a lot tonight, and we've heard it on the campaign trail, and we're hearing it in our platforms. It's everywhere. You were a successful advocate for drinking water fountain stations in schools. I believe you raised something like $50,000. So we have a lot of parents who are going to be watching this. What advice do you have for parents who have kids in schools and students who want to successfully advocate?
Thanks for that really kind question, Nick. It's a great question. I think that starts with, building a coalition of students and parents in schools on a simple ask. And the project that Nick was talking about in 2012, I along with Tessica Trong, who's running for city council, delivered $50,000 in new water refill station infrastructure funding to 18 high schools at the VSB. And that really started with student voice, convening student conferences, building a movement of students who are demanding something very simple, that they should have a water fountain that works. In our case, it was next to the gym, very well used. And for us, it was important to have student voice at the table to deliver that. That's how we got that job done. And that would be my advice to parents, is to really ensure that kids are at the table when we're talking about these solutions.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Nick, for the question. Next up is Jennifer Reddy, who is running for re-election under One City. I'm going to read a little something from One City's answer to the questions, which I thought was interesting and which my question builds on. So in that response, it says that the most recent Vancouver School Board has shifted in its view on the limits on the power of trustees to the mute and cautious, which is not an interpretation that One City agrees with. So I thought this was really interesting, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. Just elaborate on what that statement means for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I would say after being a staff at the school district for 8 years, right before I left, actually, we had a policy manual of around 200 different policies that would govern and help direct my work with students and with other staff in the district, as well as parents and important factors that relate to the way that we work with non-governmental organizations, donors, for example, what we can accept as a public district and what we can't. And when I was elected, I was really surprised to see that our policies were trimmed down to almost 10% of the binder that we used to have to direct us. And I could see the issues that were arising when students had significant issues impact them in schools, from hate incidents to discriminatory incidents, and not having a policy piece to actually back up what it is we're supposed to provide. And so that goes to speak to the governing role that has been trimmed down for the trustees, but also the advocacy role, which is not as prominent as it could be. Our ability to meet with stakeholders like union representatives, and workers in the district is significantly diminished, especially when we have a lot of workshops that aren't minuted or public. So those things need to be changed.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Jennifer. Please go ahead and ask another trustee candidate a question.
Oh, sure. So my question is for Janet as an incumbent. I'm curious if you could give one or two examples of what will be different for you in the next term in terms of transparency. How would we increase transparency at the board?
Thank you for the question. And what I think is important is to hear from students in particular about how they are learning about what's happening at the board, what information they're getting, and how we're seeking out their feedback. We do have a student trustee at the board, and we do have a Vancouver District Student Council, but I really think that we can expand the way in which students give feedback to the board. Students were instrumental in the school liaison officer review, and students were a focus group in the food framework vision. And students were an integral part of building the education plan and building the equity statement. So, we have ways in which to incorporate student voice. And I think going forward, we have to make students aware of those opportunities, and we have to make sure we're reaching out to the diverse students across the district.
Okay. Thank you for that response, Janet, and for the question, Jennifer. Next up is Christopher Richardson, who was a Vancouver school trustee several years ago under the NPA and is now running as an independent. In your response, you mentioned the importance of neighborhood schools. So I'm going to ask you a question I asked earlier, which is, how do you define a neighborhood school generally? And more specifically, in terms of size, walking distance from a student's home, accessibility, major roads, community use, and/or the presence of wraparound services. So generally, how do you define a neighborhood school?
Well, thank you, Tracy. I think that, and we seem to have a unanimous agreement that neighborhood schools is the way to go. And I would suggest the way we define it is that you can walk there, so you don't have to drive. You can get there safely. So we'll look at those, and I think we have to make sure that it is safe for a child to get to school. But it also is beyond 9 to 3. So we've heard that the very great importance of before school and after school care. That's a determinant, not necessarily the school, but the availability of services. So we have to look to partners to do that. And it's after school. And I'm going to throw a little wrench in, and we can't solve the problem here, is that Park Board, the revenue of a community center goes to the community center. So they're very entrepreneurial. Whereas a school, by history, the money goes to head office. So to try to break that link so that we can be using a school, and I would say 7 to 10, 7 in the morning to 10 at night, would be what I would see as a neighborhood school that we can all look forward to.
All right, thank you for that answer. Please go ahead and ask another trustee candidate a question.
Thank you, Tracy. I would, and this I could ask many of the people on the panel, but I would really like to ask Steve Cardwell. Steve Cardwell, I learned to respect greatly in terms of our brief role together as chair and superintendent. I look to the question 18 in your answers, inclusive education, and maybe it's more so as a leadership educator in the faculty at UBC. Inclusive education, inclusive classrooms that you speak to in the answer has been spoken about and talked about for 40 years. Yet it seems to be an elusive goal. And how can we get the resources so that we don't have a Riverview type a situation where we're trying to achieve something, but we haven't got the supports, and it's the children would fail. But in the time you've got, can we move forward in the next term towards actually accomplishing inclusive classrooms?
Well, thanks for the question, Christopher. And I do recall working with you while I was superintendent of the board. And, inclusion was a real focus back then and continues to be a focus. Inclusion means a sense of belonging for all students. And many students who have had challenges have faced exclusion from their programs. And we need to not segregate, but to integrate students in the classrooms. And that means providing greater resources to teachers, to provide greater training, using understanding UDL approaches, as you would know, as well as providing support for students with disabilities, moving from a special education type of model where most students follow one curriculum and students with disabilities might follow a different curriculum. We need to be inclusive, and that takes resources. And so my Vision Vancouver team, including Hilary Thompson, who is president of Inclusion BC, will be advocating for more resources to support inclusion and accessibility to our schools and to our classrooms. Thanks, Christopher, for the question.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Christopher. Next up is Hilary Thompson, who is running as a new trustee candidate under the Vision banner. And I think you might relate to this question because earlier you said you're a mom of 4 and a former PAC chair. So in Vision's response, the party said that Vision Vancouver candidates have concerns about the current delegation policy, the process by which the public makes their views known to trustees. Vision would like to review it so that the public has better access to the trustees who are making decisions. Could you explain what you would do to improve the policy?
So the current policy, for those who don't know, what it means is that there's a meeting where delegates come and they speak about an issue, or it could be any issue, but there's no decisions made by the board at those decisions. And often it's a little hard to read what's happening or what the reaction is if you've ever watched one of those meetings, as I have on occasion. So part of our commitment as Vision Vancouver is that we want to, if we're elected, go on a listening tour. So we want to meet with all of our community members. That would include PACs, that would include families. We want to make sure that we're consulting with people who might have barriers to participating in a traditional way, because it can be quite challenging to speak in front of a committee for various reasons. And then we want to develop an engagement charter, and that's our promise about how we would consult in various situations and what type of consultation the public can expect.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. Hillary, please go ahead and ask another trustee a question.
So my question is actually for Susie, because Susie had a long career in the Vancouver School Board. And we know that one of the problems that we're facing right now is recruiting and retaining staff. So, and one of our goals is to try and make sure that Vancouver is a place where people want to grow their careers. So I'm wondering if Susie has any advice about how we might work on the recruitment and retention so that we keep people in the system like we did with Susie.
Thanks, Hillary. So one of the things is I really don't know like how many teachers we are short. I mean, I've never seen reports. That's one of the things that I would like to see is like, how many teachers do we have? How many teachers do we have who are teachers on call? What the call rate is, what the acceptance rate is. And I think if we know those facts, it will give us a clear picture of whether or not we're hiring enough teachers. Like there's also the interview process and how people at the senior management level hire people. So if these are fully qualified teachers, they're willing to work. So why are they not being hired by the district? The other thing is in terms of retention, like, is our working environment good, right, for teachers? And if it's not, if there are issues, if there's strains and stresses, we need to look at why that's the case. So it's not just about hiring enough teachers, it's about keeping them in the system. And they're employees, so they deserve the very best, because when they're happy, they're going to be doing the best job that they can for our children.
Great. Thank you, Susie, and thank you, Hillary, for the question. Next up is Rocco Trigueros, hope I'm pronouncing that right, who is running as a new trustee candidate under the COPE party. In your response, you've said it is the job of trustees to demand the necessary budget our school system needs to fully provide an equitable, accessible, holistic, inclusive, and integral education for all children and youth. What steps are you willing to take to do this? In the past, the school board has been fired for failing to pass a balanced budget. Would you risk your trustee position to demand adequate funding for things like increased supports for students with special needs?
Absolutely, because it's the people who vote for us. We own ourselves and our work to the people who voted for us, for the students, to the parents. If they want to fire me, that's their issue, and that won't compromise what I'm going to be fighting for. And that won't compromise that we're going to demand the proper funding as well. I think it helps when you're an activist. I've been an activist all my life, ever since I was 14, 15 years old. I was in front of people and I was creating change, and I want a new change, and I want to create change in the school system. So as we say, we're not gonna ask, we're gonna demand. We need pressure. If we don't ask it, we're not gonna get it. And some people are thinking, oh, we're asking you money. No. For example, the Universal Meal Program behind me it used to be already funded in the 80s and 90s. We're just asking that monies back, and also find partnerships with the city. Instead of funding police 20%, maybe we can get some money here as well for other programs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rocco. Please go ahead and ask another trustee candidate a question.
Yes, this is actually for everyone. As you can go with the reactions, you can just put a thumb up. So it's a really quick question. Given that there is a school closures, that is addressed in our school system, school closures, that there is people, there is students that are hungry, 1 out of 4 because of the rising cost of life. Given that we are facing shortage of staff, who of all of you think that bringing back police is one of the top 3 priorities? Just put a thumb up.
I don't see any thumbs up, so.
Well, I'm surprised because it's in many platforms. Okay, Christopher.
Christopher, okay. Yeah. All right, thank you for that question. All right, so next, Alan Wong. There's my question. Alan, you are the longest serving VSB trustee, serving since 1999, and you're running for re-election as part of Vision. What do you see as your greatest achievement, and what do you see as your greatest challenge over those years?
Thank you for the question, Tracy. Greatest achievement is the seismic mitigation program. The reason it was an achievement is because we were working with stakeholder groups, especially the parents groups, FSSS, known as the Lizards. And in parallel, we all went to the government, the MLAs and the MPs, and we lobbied together to get the seismic mitigation program together. As a group with reports from the school board, we effectively got the seismic mitigation program adopted by the provincial government. So I'm very glad how we worked with all stakeholder groups. The challenge during this term is the issue with regards to anti-racism and non-discrimination. But I am glad that we had that because we worked on it. And this term, we worked really hard on developing an anti-racism, non-discrimination policy. And with that policy, and it's just continuing on, we're trying to operationalize that. So I'm very happy there was that causes a positive result.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Alan. Please go ahead and ask another trustee a question.
I'll ask Susie Ma a question. Susie, what was the most inspiring experience you had as a teacher at the VSB? As a teacher.
Oh, there's so many,
Yep.
too many to talk about, but let me think. I would say that one of my warmest things that I think about all the time is many years ago, I was an ELL teacher at Nightingale School. And at that time I was teaching a reception class, and I had a student who was from Nicaragua, and she was exhibiting like a lot of anxiety in the classroom. She was crying all the time. And I used one of our multicultural homeschool workers and found out that she was really missing her grandma. And she was coming to school and crying all the time. And her parents didn't realize that she was so unhappy in school. And so I worked with the family through the multicultural homeschool worker. And we were able to actually get her to phone her grandma and have regular conversations with her grandma. And that was just so great. And she has remembered me for doing that, and the family has. And I've run into her several times. And today she's a nurse that's working at BGH. She's a supervisor. And she says because of the work that I did for her, she has become the person that she is today.
That's great. Thank you very much for that story, Susie. And thank you for the question, Alan. Up next is Karina Zeidler, who is running as a new trustee candidate under the Vote Socialist banner. You said this in your response. The VSB currently puts the cart before the horse and makes budgets based on what the ministry will allow. This is wrong. The VSB should calculate the need, pay the bill, and hand it to the ministry to collect the necessary taxes to pay for the decent treatment of students with disabilities and or diverse abilities. A similar question to what I asked, I think it was Rocco. In the past, entire boards have been fired for refusing to balance the budget. So how would you work within those guidelines? Would you be willing to risk your position as a trustee?
Hi, thanks so much for the question. So that's right. Back in 2016, the whole board was fired, and obviously that's not the that would never be the goal of what you would want. But there are times when, if faced with massive cuts from the provincial government, that the board has to make sometimes very drastic decisions that way, and they may put forward a budget that will then result in the whole board being fired. In those kind of situations, it obviously is a news item and everybody is aware of what is going on, and it then highlights the provincial government's lack of funding to schools, and it will then hopefully include the community's engagement in that process. So we have to do what we have to do. We can't just sit passively and let the ministry dictate, exactly what's going to happen with the budget. There needs to be a bit of fight there at times, if needed.
Thank you, Karina. Please go ahead and ask another trustee candidate a question.
Thanks so much. So I'd like to ask this question to Janet Fraser. As evidenced in my introduction, I'm quite concerned about the current state of schools and COVID-19. And so my question to you is whether you favor returning the mask mandate to Vancouver schools, or if you favor ongoing illness and disease of COVID in schools, and discrimination in particular, given that our BC Human Rights Commissioner, Kasari Devinder, has clearly stated that not having mask mandates is discriminatory in terms of it causing disproportionate harm to those people who are already marginalized, immunocompromised people, Indigenous, racialized people, people with disabilities, and low-income people.
I'll take that question, if that's all right. That's a really good question because, the health and well-being of students is very important. I believe in, and the Greens all believe in, following the guidance of experts in public health. We are a body that follows the evidence of the work that's done in science, and we welcome masks. I think issues of bullying and discrimination, those need to be dealt with as issues of bullying and discrimination, but masks are welcome, but we're not going to mandate that for the student body or for staff. And we've learned a lot since the start of the pandemic. Ventilation and vaccinations are the two V's. They are the primary forms of disease prevention. And those are the ones that we have done the ventilation help upgrades in schools, and vaccines are now available for young kids. So I believe those are those are going to be the first, the first range. There's the pancake, all the pancakes of protection, and those ones are the most important ones. And masks, they're welcome. It's a personal choice.
Thank you for that, Lois, and thank you for the question, Karina. Appreciate it. So it's 3 minutes to 9. We have one more to go. Thank you for waiting so long, Josh. Last but not least, Josh Zhang, who's running with ABC Vancouver Party, running as a new trustee candidate. ABC Vancouver Party said in its platform that if elected, the ABC Vancouver trustees would fully fund music and fine arts programs in Vancouver schools. How would you create the budget room to do that? And would you support user fees and or instrument rental fees?
Thank you for the question. I just want to start off by saying I was a big beneficiary of these music programs in my native school of Point Grey Secondary. Let me just start off by saying how important the fine arts and music are to our young children today. Without tackling funding directly, I have to say that there has to be enough demand for these programs through specific schools in order for them to happen effectively. I think one of my suggestions is that allowing cross-catchment attendance would be beneficial for a lot of students that are actively seeking these, such as Bing Arts. I think Point Grey Secondary had a huge music program with 4 jazz bands and tons of off-timetable stuff. Thirdly, there are inequities in the way that certain PACs can raise money. I think at certain sides of the city, it's very easy for a PAC to raise a few $1,000s, and other sides of the city, and it's much more difficult. So we're committed to advocating for those ones that are having trouble raising funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Please go ahead and ask another trustee candidate a question.
I'd like to ask my question to Alan Wong. Seeing that you are a longtime serving member or trustee, I'm sure you've never gotten this question before, but what is your advice for a new trustee?
Thanks for the question, Josh. And my advice is in the beginning, it's a steep learning curve, and to attend all the workshops as much as possible. To listen, to make before you make any decisions on your time on the board, is to listen to all sides and to be fair and objective, and then to hold decision making till the very end. It's superintendent and the staff gives a lot of reports, but not just listen to those reports, but listen to all stakeholder groups and given attention and time for everybody to see all angles of what your response and your ultimate deliberation with the board would be. So sounds like one of the questions in the DPAC survey was how long do you weekly time spent as a trustee. In the beginning, it will be very long, but well, it'll continue to be long throughout the course, throughout the term, but it's just a matter of taking the time. So that's my advice. I don't see Michael giving me the 10 seconds. It felt like I was talking for a while, but that's my advice, is just take the time and ask a lot of questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan, and thank you, Josh. And it's 9:01, so that was pretty good. That brings us to the end of my section of this evening. I'm going to pass it back to Vic, but I'd like to thank you all and wish you all good luck. So, and everybody was so polite. I didn't have to mute anybody, and very well done. Thank you.
Tracy, thank you. That was absolutely amazing moderating. Also, what a collegial group, and you could feel some really positive energy in this virtual room. And I really, really love the answers. So much thought went into all of this. Those 37 questions were not easy to answer, especially given the timeline, right? 5 days to answer all of that was quite a bit of work. We really appreciate it. It's kind of like a jump start to where we got to get going. And we are on this journey together. We heard a lot about advocacy tonight and effective advocacy, and making sure that the VSB uses a term called business cases, and that's a term that they use to cover project definition reports and all of that kind of cases that go to the ministry. So we need those to be strong. And sometimes it's not just a matter of money. Sometimes it's a matter of how you use the money. And I'll give you 3 examples. So the first example is the ministry has a rule called lowest cost. And that rule forbids life cycle analysis. It's the only province in Canada, probably the only province in the first world, that actually says we're not going to include life cycle cost. So we've heard some people talk about accessibility today. Well, accessibility is not included. We heard people talk about sustainability. Well, sustainability is not included. We heard people talk about air safety, ventilation. Well, that's not included. So that's one rule where it's not cool. And we actually spend more dollars. So think about that. We actually spend more money over the life cycle because we have this rule. That's one example. Another example is one-time funding. So we get some one-time funding. And then what do we do with it? Well, it's really hard to spend it. And why is it hard to spend one-time funding? Because if we spend it this year, then the kids will expect it next year. So if we got some money for a food program, or we got some extra money today for psycho assessments, then the problem is we cannot spend that, because if we spend it, then we're expecting that for next year, and then something called structural deficit, which I still got to get my head around. So there's something going on there that we need to look at. And that's a ministry problem as well. Why should it be one-time funding? It should address the systemic issues. And then that goes into the third part, which is resourcing. We are vastly under-resourced in educational assistants, support workers. And that is a very, very big problem in terms of how does it impact kids. So we need to really, as DPAC, we're trying to figure out how do we get the information on how it impacts kids so we can be more powerful advocates. The great news is the floor has been reset. We've asked for a meeting with the Ministry of Education, DPAC has, and we will invite the new trustees to that meeting. And we will get that meeting because it's important. Our education system is important, and we're going to take a great education system overall and make every part of it really awesome. So that's our goal. Thank you so much. We look forward to working with everyone here. You guys are an inspiration. Every single one of you are an inspiration because you completed those 37 questions. We are going to share those with the public. The gate to enter this meeting, you've accomplished it. You guys are all winners to DPAC. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Vic.
Good night. Thanks very
Good night.
much. Thanks, Vic.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. See you on the trail.
Michael and Vic and Karen for getting us sorted out.
Yes. Thank you, Karen, especially.
You always forget something. I forgot to thank my amazing team here. This DPAC team, wow, you guys are amazing. You know, we did it, right? A lot of effort. I don't think we have the energy to do another one.
Didn't want to say it, but
there
No,
sure
that
is
was- that was really well done.
temptation, right? To call up the
Oh,
mayors
I
and say, look, we got some questions for you.
I know.
And then
I mean,
to say,
you know,
and then to say to the mayors,
it's
well,
a
we're
question.
only going to admit you if you answer the questions.
Yeah, exactly. I was really impressed by how well everybody worked together, and the candidates, how they were respectful of each other, but also like lifted each other up, kudos to, this person on